This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers. Let's take a look at our headlines. Rather than our headlines, our top story for the hour, Chinese State Council and Foreign Minister Wang Yi has concluded a 3-day trip to Egypt. Wang met with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and Egyptian Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry. His talks focused on boosting cooperation between Egypt and China in all fields. Wang Yi is on a Middle East tour that ends in Algeria on Tuesday. Here's Adel Amrouchi with more.
Wang Yi concluded a 3-day visit to Egypt's New Alamein city on Monday. There, he met with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to discuss developing ties between the two nations. This year, Egypt and China are celebrating the 65th anniversary of the establishment of their diplomatic ties.
I appreciate the comprehensive strategic partnership between us, which participated in providing qualitative transformation and a leap between us in all fields, especially during the past 7 years. We look forward to more support from China, our friendly nation, to Egypt's stance in the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam, based on the existing strategic relations and the importance of the issue of Egypt's existence to reach a fair solution for all involved parties.
Egypt expressed its desire to open more opportunities to export agricultural products to China and increase Chinese foreign direct investments in Egypt. The talks tackled how both countries can help in establishing stability in the Middle East and counter terrorism. In that regard, Wang announced that Egypt will be a dialogue partner in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, a body concerned with battling extremism.
We see Egypt as the most significant, comprehensive, strategic partner in the Arab world, the Islamic world, African and developing nations. We are very keen to develop our relations with Egypt. Our ties have yielded fruitful results, especially during COVID-19 pandemic. We've provided support in a spirit of one team, which formed a model for developing nations. Our cooperation in this field is a new significant step in our ties.
Wang Yi and the Egyptian Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry signed an agreement to establish a government cooperation committee to lead the development in relations both nations seek. The Chinese Foreign Minister's final meeting in New Alamein was with the Secretary General of the Arab League, Ahmed Abul-Ghait. They discussed cooperation in regional conflicts, on top of which the Palestinian crisis. Wang Yi's visit solidifies the comprehensive strategic partnership between the two countries. Hosting it here in this Mediterranean city is yet another indication that Egypt is keen to include China in its mega national projects that would help in boosting its economy. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, New Alamein, Egypt.
Well, for more on that, joining me now is Professor Alam Ahmed. He is the director at the Middle Eastern Knowledge Economy Institute. Thank you so much for joining us. In your assessment, what has been the significance of this latest visit to Egypt by China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi?
Thank you very much. It's extremely significant if we look at the most important devastating thing across the whole world, which is COVID-19 global pandemic. This visit, during the visit yesterday on Sunday, it's the first production facilities to be launched for COVID vaccine, the Chinese vaccine. Yesterday, I think the information or the detail we've been told is 1 million doses. That in itself, in this particular time of this global pandemic, is extremely significant because vaccine means life. It's a completely change of landscape in terms of the relationship. Also, we need to be reminded this is the second visit within less than 6 months, which can tell you about how important the relationship is being developing between Egypt and China.
Professor, what are the key benefits of enhancing bilateral ties between China and Egypt?
Very important question. China and Egypt have reached quite a very deep level of relationship. We're talking about not just the vaccine production, which as I just mentioned, but they were talking about technology, infrastructure project. We're talking about two countries supporting each other as the international diplomatic dialogue in terms of not intervening in each other's affairs, supporting their own cause. We're talking about data security projects China is proposing for Egypt. We're talking about China already confirmed to Egypt that the Shanghai Cooperation, for example, organization accepting Egypt to be a dialogue partner. We're talking about the Egyptian statement of President Sisi last year. If you remember, he said there is a pivotal role of China in the stability of the Middle East. So Egypt is seeing China as a critical partner in the stability of the Middle East. Also, Egypt is being seen by the Chinese as the most important, one of the most important partners in Africa, as an African country. In the Arab countries, as Arab country is also being seen one of the most important countries as the developing countries, but also as the Middle Eastern Africa. So there is quite a lot of things going on now here. The relationship, as I said, is being talking about many things, including technology, infrastructure, capacity. Even the Chinese now, somehow or another, they've been well briefed by President Sisi about the recent development in the dam, in the issues between Egypt and Ethiopia and Sudan. And the Chinese have confirmed their support of Egypt, usage of the water of the river. So it's quite significant. The relationship is really quite deep now.
Professor, speak to us about how the rest of Africa can gain from China's partnership as the continent battles the coronavirus pandemic.
There is much they can gain. Africa, I'm not saying it's being neglected, it's being supported. Yes, we have seen, for example, AstraZeneca vaccine reaching Africa, but it's not in a large amount of doses. The fact now we have a production in Al-Alamein in Egypt, producing or reaching a production level of 1 million doses a day. That's significant because don't forget, Egypt is the gateway to the entire Africa and the Arab countries. I was also very pleased to see that even China is helping Palestine and so on. But for African countries, if you remember last year, 50 delegates from all African ministers and diplomats have visited China's leading Sinopharm, which is the Chinese leading vaccine, human vaccine R&D, which is, I think, number 5 in the whole world. And at that point, things have been going on for many months. But China's interest in supporting African countries has been long, and also China has been seen as a very close, as the President Sisi sometimes call it, or some African presidents call it, a genuine development partner. They don't see it like the Americans want to intervene in their affairs, but they see China as their genuine development partner. And China's stance in Africa has been very clear. And I think that's where the Africans are now looking to really quickly benefit from this remarkable production of vaccine inside Africa. I think Egypt is the first country where this production is taking place. And I'm really looking forward to see the entire African continents or countries are benefiting as quick as possible from this vaccination.
Thank you so much for all that, Professor Alam Ahmed. He is the director at the Middle Eastern Knowledge Economy Institute. Well, China and Egypt have decided to jointly donate 500,000 vaccine doses to Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Egypt and the Chinese pharmaceutical company Sinovac Biotech had signed the agreement for production last December. Here are more details on the vaccine manufactured in Egypt.
Egypt takes a closer step towards officially releasing its domestically produced COVID-19 vaccine. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli announced a 50% completion of the nation's first 2 million doses of the Chinese Sinovac COVID-19 vaccine.
The magnitude of demand on the COVID-19 vaccines is immense. That made some of the companies we've contracted to supply us with the vaccines to be behind schedule. From day one, we eyed acquiring the ability of manufacturing the vaccine so that we won't be under any mercy of the global market. In that regard, I would like to thank the great friends, the People's Republic of China, for its full support in this domestic manufacturing.
The government vaccination arm, Vaxera, is currently producing the COVID-19 jab in Cairo. Its production line has the capacity of producing 300,000 doses daily. Madbouli says his government aims to produce 80 million doses of the vaccine before the year ends, instead of the initial plan of 40 million. Once completed, the new Vaxera complex will be able to add 3 million doses to Egypt's daily capacity to produce all kinds of vaccines. The agreement with China includes full transfer of technology for producing COVID-19 vaccines. That will include producing the raw biomaterial domestically in Egypt. The beginning of local production of COVID-19 vaccines is a huge relief to the country. The nation's vaccination program has somewhat slowed down because of the global interruption in vaccine supply. This domestic achievement will help Egypt in its plan to vaccinate all education staff and at least 5 million students within the next 2 months before the new school year begins. Adil Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Over in Tunisia, concern is rising over the ability to fight the pandemic. Hospitals report lacking medical oxygen and intensive care units are full. Adnan Shuashi brings the stat report.
The World Health Organization says that the daily death rate in Tunisia is the highest in Africa and the Arab world. The country's health department has called the situation catastrophic.
We are determined to win this war against the pandemic. Tunisians can overcome this health crisis. The health system will not collapse because our heroes are saving lives every day. All medics, paramedics and military health personnel are engaged in this fight on the ground. We will stay strong and resist until this difficult situation is over.
Hisham Mishishi added that the national vaccination campaign will be accelerated in the next few days. Many countries have promised to deliver over 3.5 million doses of coronavirus vaccines to Tunis.
We have stepped up the vaccination campaign nationwide in more than 100 centers. The health department has dedicated mobile vaccination teams which go to citizens at home and in remote regions. The private sector also joined the fight led by the public health facilities. Even the civil society is playing an important role to curb the pandemic.
The Tunisian Ministry of Health has received medical equipment from dozens of countries. These donations include thousands of ventilators, some 5 million protective masks, and tons of disinfection products.
As part of the international solidarity movement with Tunisia, we've received tons of medical equipment from friendly countries, including Italy. We thank all our partners and friends who did not hesitate to offer help at this critical period and support during the fight against the pandemic.
The death toll has surpassed 17,000 since the outbreak of the pandemic in March 2020. Experts assert that about 4,000 deaths have not been included in official figures. Therefore, the real number of COVID-19 fatalities in Tunisia is about 21,000.
After successfully containing the virus last year, Tunisia is now grappling with the rise in infections. Many countries have united to support the North African state as it struggles to contain the fourth wave of the coronavirus pandemic. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
It's time now for us to take a short break and return. Celebration as the UK lifts all COVID-19 restrictions, but analysts warn of significant threats. And we'll look at preparations by Muslims to mark Eid al-Adha amid the coronavirus pandemic.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climate and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Adnan Shawishi, Tunis, Cairo,
Juba, Johannesburg,
Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice. How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Nigeria is my home. 160 million vibrant, ambitious individuals constantly seeking the perfect self-expression. It is these people who inspired me to be that person that is seen, to be a voice that is heard, and ultimately to be the anchor that I am. I have to tap in, tune in, and turn on the very best qualities within me to deliver the news. I'm Richard Nta, an anchor for CGTN.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients in a hospital bed and their family members are not there, there's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Live. The annual Muslim pilgrimage of Hajj has begun in Saudi Arabia. For the second year running, the kingdom has drastically restricted who can attend amid attempts to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Jacob Grives has more from Dubai.
The Hajj pilgrimage is underway in Saudi Arabia, but at a limited capacity, with Riyadh taking the decision to prevent foreigners from attending. This year, it's only open to citizens and residents of the country. Even then, there's been further restrictions implemented to try and ensure the safety of pilgrims and prevent the spread of COVID-19 in the country. According to authorities, only people aged between 18 and 65 can attend. They also have to be vaccinated or immunised against the virus and be free of chronic illnesses. In total, the capacity for this has been set at a maximum of 60,000 people. That's more than the close to 1,000 worshippers permitted last year, but a lot less than in normal times. Saudi Arabia's health ministry has spoken of the concern of the potential spread of virus variants as a reason for imposing restrictions despite the relatively widespread vaccination drive in the country. It means once more the pilgrimage has a very different look and feel to normal. The kingdom is seen as the custodian of two of Islam's holiest sites. Before the pandemic, around 2.5 million pilgrims used to visit Mecca and Medina for the week-long Hajj, alongside the year-round Umrah pilgrimage. The capacity limitations and the restrictions on foreigners attending also carries economic significance, particularly to the local hospitality sector. In normal times, this all brings in around $12 billion to the kingdom. That figure, alongside the number of those in attendance, is set to be a lot lower this year. Jacob Greaves, CGTN in Dubai.
Well, as we heard, there are Muslims around the world will this week mark the Eid al-Adha festivities. Yarsa Kim has more on how Egyptians are preparing for the festivities.
Eid al-Adha comes from the word udhiyah, which means the sacrifice. That's when Muslims with the financial means would buy livestock, mainly sheep, cows or camels, and distribute its meat to the poor.
It's a religious tradition mentioned in the Holy Quran for those who can afford it and according to the Sharia law. It has a deep meaning that the well-off should always support the poor and not just on certain occasions. For instance, since the coronavirus pandemic started, more people are helping the poor and those affected by the coronavirus with increased charity work and more sacrifices than before.
Hani Kamil works on a farm. He says the highest season of the year is the Eid al-Adha.
The farm is operating all year round, but we have extensive production for the Eid al-Adha. We monitor the health of the livestock, the nutrition and well-being. We then bring the animals from our different farms over here, the closest place to Cairo, to sell and distribute them for the Eid al-Adha.
The sheep is the most sold due to its lower price than cows and camels. There are 3 types of lambs in the market. The Baladi or local city ones are the most in demand. There's the Barqi, which comes from the Bedouin villages, and the imported Sudanese livestock. Naturally, the Egyptian market has witnessed a slowdown since the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic.
It was affected by the pandemic issue, but there was a segment that made up for the drop in sales. Those are the people who could not travel for the annual pilgrimage due to the travel restrictions. They spent the pilgrimage money on buying more sheep and cows to distribute to the poor, and these helped push sales up again. The price of livestock increased this year because of the rise in animal feed prices. This happened in all farms, but not so much with us because we also produce animal feeds, so we managed to keep the prices down.
Islamic law stipulates the owner of the livestock is to distribute 1/3 to the poor, 1/3 to the relatives and friends, and 1/3 to his household. The udhiyah, or the sacrificed lamb, should be distributed by the first day of Eid. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Britain has lifted most of its COVID-19 related restrictions. At the stroke of midnight, nightclubs reopened in London for the first time in 16 months. Clubbers flocked to one of the first rule-free live music events since the pandemic began last year. Nogutula Chabalala has that story.
It's been over a year since England imposed its restrictions to limit the spread of COVID-19. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has now lifted legal restrictions on social contact. In the early hours of July 19th, nightclubs reopened for the first time. Many were happy to be dancing and rejoiced in human interaction in what some have dubbed Freedom Day.
I want to dance, I want to hear live music, I want the vibe of being at a gig, being around people. I think I'm really excited for that. I feel like we've lost it. Yes, it feels like Freedom Day. It really, really does, yeah, to me.
Can you sum up your emotions going to a concert?
I mean, I'm so excited, and I know that obviously... I know that the rate is going up, but people say that it's not a big deal because it's young people that are getting infected and it wouldn't be a serious thing. They were not going to die from it. So it feels okay for us to do it in a way.
Promoters of the event are still cautious of the spread of COVID-19. They reduced the number of bands and the number of venues.
The want is there, most definitely. I think people have severely been missing it. It's something that you can't replace with any other feeling.
I think that I've seen more and more people take caution than they did a month ago, and basically, apart from if it's the football, but at the same time, like where we've got to now, Freedom Day is not as let all your shackles go, but it still doesn't mean this stuff shouldn't happen.
British society appears split on the restrictions. Some want tough rules to continue, while others want them eased. For business owners, including those of nightclubs, travel companies, and in the hospitality industry, have been desperate to reopen the economy. Artists say the lockdown has been tough.
Before this gig, I had a bit of apprehension that I wasn't going to like it again because it's been so long. I'm like, maybe I have grown up, and maybe I'm actually not going to like performing that much anymore. And as soon as we stood on the stage and started sound checking, I was like, oh yeah, I do like this. It's like, I do love this. This is my passion. It's like, that's why I've been doing it for so many years, because it is a passion.
More than 68% of UK adults are fully vaccinated. The country has one of the world's highest death tolls from COVID-19. It is facing a new wave of cases, with more than 50,000 infections per day across the United Kingdom. Epidemiologists have been skeptical about the lifting of restrictions. Noktula Shabalala, CGTN.
To discuss this further, we're not joined by Sharon Fane, professor of public health at Wits University in South Africa. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor. Professor, what are your thoughts about the UK lifting all COVID-19 restrictions?
I think all of us are trying to come to grips with what it means when we say we have to live with COVID-19. And I think you have to balance things. And the things you have to balance are you going to be able to break the link between getting ill and dying? And I think the vaccines have shown that we will. The other thing you have to balance is between life and livelihoods. So in the UK, in comparison to many other countries, they have a lot of social safety nets. And so they might well be in a position to decrease many of their restrictions. An interesting study was done here in South Africa by an organization called Groundup, where they traveled on public transport, measuring carbon dioxide intake as a proxy for breathing other people's air. And the one thing that they did find was very, very high levels of rebreathing other people's air in what we call minibus taxis, or what you might call in Kenya matatus, but in public transport. And it seems to me one thing we know about COVID is that ventilation is incredibly important. And so I could see some logic to keeping people's masks in inside spaces in poorly ventilated areas. But these are choices people have to make using data in their own countries. And so the question is, have we broken the link between death and getting ill? I think that is yes. Have we broken the link between getting ill and severe illness? I think the answer is yes. But there are a lot of unvaccinated people, and the question is, have we broken the link between them and getting severe diseases that might have lifelong consequences? Those are some of the questions we don't know. So some caution, I think, is required, but countries have to make their own choices.
When you speak about countries making their own choices, I think it would also be very specific to what you've said, depending on what's happening in that country, the infrastructure that they have in place, the safety nets that you mentioned. But just speak to us about how other countries, whether they should follow example, and what would need to be in place in specific countries were they to draw back on the amount of restrictions that they have.
So I can use the example of South Africa, which I know better. Here the choice really is between life and livelihoods. We have to protect both. And unfortunately, with the level of unemployment that we have in this country, with the level of poverty that we have in the country, I think you have to be incredibly careful. And you make very different choices. More people, or as many people, or nearly as many people, might suffer severe long-term consequences from not having a job or not having food as they would from getting an infection. And so I think that the balance is very different. I think rich countries are in a position to make any choice they want, actually. They are very, very privileged to have that opportunity. I think there are very few countries who can follow that lead. So maybe in Europe they can, maybe in the US they can, but I don't think that that's a luxury open to the majority of people in most of the world.
Professor, let's go back to what's happening specifically in the U.S. Thousands of new cases are being recorded, in the UK rather, are being recorded in the UK, despite a significant number of people having been vaccinated. They're telling us that it's about 68% of that population that's been vaccinated. What do you believe are the underlying factors for that scenario?
So clearly the obvious underlying factor is there are people who are still vulnerable, and so they're getting infected. The question is, what causes that vulnerability? Some of it, of course, is personal of the individual, but the other is the characteristic of the virus itself. And what we know and what we've demonstrated is the virus mutates. What drives that mutation? That mutation is driven by the spread of the virus among the unvaccinated. And you will know we have now moved on to alpha and beta and delta and so on. The delta virus is spreading hugely around the world. And so honestly, the most important thing is the underlying thing that was first said at the beginning of this this pandemic. No one is safe until everyone is safe. And if vaccines are not rolled out across the world, everyone will still be vulnerable because there will be the scope for another variant and another variant to which current immunity might not protect you. So the answer is, let's start sharing scientific knowledge, scientific technology, and let's make sure the whole world gets access to the vaccine. And really, that's probably the most important public health measure that will protect people in the UK and will protect people around the world.
Professor, thank you so much for being on the program with us. Professor Sharon Fon, she is a professor of public health at Wits University in South Africa. Well, let's move over to West Africa now, where the Presidential Steering Committee on COVID-19 in Nigeria has put 6 states on red alert. This comes after reports of an increase in patients affected with the Delta variant in those states. CGTN's Wanja Mungai has more.
The Nigerian Presidential Steering Committee says the Delta variant of COVID-19 had been detected in the country early this month. The number of patients with the variant has now increased significantly. The government has subsequently issued a red alert in 6 states, namely Lagos, Oyo, Rivers, Kaduna, Kano, Plateau, and the Federal Capital Territory. It has also maintained restrictions on travelers from India, Brazil, Turkey, and South Africa.
For the new variants, we have already listed the black-red zones of country, which you mentioned 4 of them, 3 in the Europe and 1 in Africa, South Africa. These measures still in place. Anybody coming in, inbound, outbound passengers from these countries are quarantined straight. Your documents are screened, no negotiation at all, and your test for second day of arrival and 7 days must be done to certify you safe before you are released into the community.
The World Health Organization says the Delta variant is of high concern because it has increased transmissibility. Currently, the variant has been detected in over 100 countries. Medical experts in Nigeria say they have taken necessary steps to combat its spread.
We make sure that we step up our testing and accessibility, because access and turnaround time is key for us to have accurate data. And recently, there's even ongoing zero prevalence survey across the 12 states plus FCT, which FCT is still on. The survey is still on to ascertain the disease burden and the pattern of the disease and the level of antibody. That will help also to guide us on the issue of vaccines, issue of deploying our commodities and strategies and changing policies as it evolves.
Nigeria is believed to have administered 4 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine, translating to 1% of the country's population being vaccinated. With this, the Delta variant poses an increased and more severe threat to the country. Wanja Mungai, CGTN.
In Senegal, Eid al-Adha celebrations are a busy time for sellers of sheep. However, an increase in COVID-19 infections there has brought about the need to observe additional health protocols. This year, the sheep market is being held online and not the usual open-air markets. Wanja Mugai has more.
In the suburbs of Dakar, Senegal's capital, the Khadim Rasoul sheepfold is holding a ram sale. This time, the vendors are doing it differently. The ongoing coronavirus pandemic has prompted them to hold a sale online. Samba Sal takes photos and posts them on social media to offer a selection of sheep to his clients.
Because of COVID-19, people are buying sheep online to avoid coming here. They are afraid of coming to the sales point and being infected. They prefer to choose between the different photos of the sheep that we have published, and then they contact us. Once we agree on the price, we can then deliver their sheep. We sell online and deliver sheep to Mali, Cote d'Ivoire, Guinea, Burkina Faso, Mauritania, and Gambia.
Sal always looks forward to the annual Eid al-Adha festival. In Senegal, they call it Tabaski Festival in Wolof language. They offer the rams as sacrifice to emulate Abraham in the holy book of Quran. Abraham is said to have been asked to offer the animal sacrifice in place of his son Ishmael in obedience to Allah's command. Families in the West African country also use the animal as a symbol of prestige. Some go to an extent of borrowing loans to conform to the social and religious ritual. This season, vendors at the sheepfold say business has been good, courtesy of the new digital strategy. They have so far sold 3,000 animals, with each going at an average price of $125.
There are a lot of advantages using social media to sell sheep, but there are also disadvantages. Buyers must be very careful because some people will take the opportunity to cheat them. We can bargain over the price of sheep on the phone, but we ask all our customers to pay on delivery. I think that nobody should pay for a sheep that you've only seen in a photo. That's not sure.
This new method is hoped to reduce the spread of coronavirus in a country already experiencing a third wave. So far, the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has reported about 52,000 cases. And on Sunday, the country recorded 1,800 new cases. Wanjamungai, CGTN.
Time for us to take a short break and return your business news, including OPEC and major non-OPEC oil producers agree to boost output to meet increasing demand.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo,
who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Time now for the business news. OPEC and major non-OPEC oil producers known as OPEC Plus have agreed to boost output by 400,000 barrels a day to meet increasing demand. Meanwhile, they are to phase out the existing output cut of 5.8 million barrels per day by next September. Last year, the OPEC Plus reduced production by a record 10 million barrels per day amid the coronavirus pandemic. The adjustment had already been reduced and currently stands at 5.8 million barrels. Well, a look at China's economy. The country's top economic planning body said on Monday that China's GDP grew 5.3% from January to June this year compared to the same period pre-pandemic in 2019. The National Development and Reform Committee said that compared to the first half of 2020, as China emerged from the pandemic, the Chinese economy rebounded by 13% to top 53 trillion yuan, or $8 trillion. It added that a strong comeback in the service industry had driven the country's overall economic recovery. There are fears among Ugandan traders over the risk of cash spreading COVID-19. In a sector where people rely heavily on physical currency for transactions, there are concerns that the money they're handling could be spreading the virus, despite health experts saying the risk is low. Leon Senyanga reports from Kampala.
Health experts say diseases like COVID-19 can be transmitted off surfaces that have been touched by an infected person.
It stays longer on the surfaces, so usually you pick it from there and then put it on yourself.
Such surfaces can include money, and that's worrying traders that notes are super spreaders.
If he gives me money, then I just put it in the basket. By the time I'm done with collecting all the money at the end of the day, and I forget to wash my hands, I go and serve another customer or I do something else. Then at the end of the day, if someone had COVID and I got the money, I can also end up getting it, and the transmission spreads faster.
To keep safe, Joanna Wori sanitizes her hands and money regularly. According to health experts, the possibility of contracting COVID-19 through money remains low. Despite such assurances, the guidance has been to wash and sanitize your hands after touching any surface. The measures are being taken seriously in places like these, where cash changes hands from customers to shopkeepers frequently.
We are supposed to be washing all the time. You wash because you never know if you touch the hand of somebody who is already infected and then you go ahead touching others, even to yourself, you can be infected.
The concern on handling money has sped up the shift into another mode of payment. Cashless payments are now more common than before. While that is a safer practice, a large segment of customers in Uganda still heavily rely on cash payments for commodities. Leon Sanyange, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
African countries need equal access to COVID-19 vaccines to begin rebuilding their devastated tourism industries. That was according to Kenya's tourism minister. The minister was speaking during a meeting hosted by the UN World Tourism Organization to discuss ways of reviving the sector, including encouraging inter-African travel. CGTN's Joy Kiruki Juma reports.
The tourism sector drives many African economies, but the coronavirus pandemic has exposed its underbelly. According to Kenya's tourism minister, about 21 million jobs have been lost in the sector across the African continent since the start of the pandemic.
In Kenya here it's about 1.5 million, so you could see how devastating it is in Kenya. Yeah, but other countries it's not devastating because they have not opened and taken the opportunity and the potential tourism has in their countries.
The challenge of supplying enough COVID-19 vaccines to Africa has essentially put a pause on inoculation. According to the World Health Organization, only 18 million people are fully vaccinated in a continent of 1.3 billion.
We need fairness. The Western world should stop hoarding. Countries order vaccine 4 times their requirements. Yeah? And we in Africa who don't have even 10% of our requirement are denied accessibility. And that is the unfairness we are talking about.
The collapse of the tourism sector has deprived many African countries of one of their main sources of hard currency. Kenya welcomed 2 million visitors in 2019. For the first half of 2021, the tourism ministry reported only 300,000 visitors.
Our target is 2 million because we had 2 million in 2019, but definitely 2019 is a gone year. We need to think differently to create another post-2019.
Balala has called for a single global protocol for travel to apply to all nations. This, he said, is to prevent rich nations from starving their African counterparts of travel and business opportunities. Joy Kiruki Juma, CGTN.
Time for us to take a short break. More news making headlines when we return, including we update you on the aftermath of deadly flooding across Europe.
You're watching breaking news on CGTN.
Welcome to the world today on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
"188 people lost their lives and hundreds more remain missing after devastating floods hit Western Europe. Tens of thousands are unable to return to their homes. Unprecedented rainfall unleashed flooding in parts of Western Germany before moving to neighboring Belgium and the Netherlands. The number of Belgian residents confirmed dead rose to 31 on Sunday. German Chancellor Angela Merkel has described the floods as terrifying. 157 people lost their lives in Germany. During her visits to the flood zone, Merkel said all efforts were being made to help victims and support rescue efforts. Trent Murray reports from Frankfurt.
The desperate search for flood survivors continues across Western Europe. Germany has been hardest hit, and with hundreds of people still missing, the death toll is expected to keep rising in the days ahead. Back from her visit to Washington, Chancellor Angela Merkel headed straight to the disaster zone to inspect the damage.
It's scary. I almost want to say the German language hardly knows any words for the devastation that has been wreaked here. However, what I have also seen is incredibly comforting, how people are sticking together, how they are helping each other, and the solidarity that is here.
While the clean-up operation continues across northwest Germany, concerns have now turned further south, with evacuation orders issued in parts of Bavaria because of fresh downpours. The flooding has also damaged critical infrastructure, with roads, bridges and electricity networks all facing multi-billion-dollar repair bills. Many of the small villages that have been hit by these floods are now virtually uninhabitable, with electricity still down and fresh drinking water in short supply. That's meant that authorities and aid organisations in nearby cities like Frankfurt, Cologne and Bonn are now working together to provide support for displaced families. Many residents from those nearby cities have also volunteered to help, driving into the disaster zone to assist with clean-up efforts.
We come from a town nearby, and the moment we saw the first pictures, we realised that the people here would need a lot of help because of all this rubble you can see in the background. It won't be gone in one day. So we thought we'd come here and do our bit to help out.
With communities across the Netherlands, Belgium and Luxembourg also hit by the floods, questions remain about whether enough early warnings were given to towns and villages in low-lying areas. Questions that many want answered quickly so they can be better prepared when the next deluge comes. Trent Murray, CGTN, Frankfurt.
To South Africa now, where a leopard seal has made a rare appearance along the country's coastline after one was found on a popular Cape Town beach. The animals are primarily found in the Antarctica region, but have in the past been sighted along the Cape Coast. Wildlife authorities there have been keeping a close eye on the animal after its appearance caused a bit of excitement amongst the curious public. CGTN's Travis Andrews has more.
It's a common sight along the cold, icy waters of Antarctica, but not at the balmy coastline of the Western Cape. This leopard seal is a rare visitor to these shores. It's one of only 20 of the species thought to have come to the coastline. It has now taken up temporary residence at Cape Town's Kommetjie Beach and is causing quite a spectacle.
The leopard seal does pose a potential danger to people. It's obviously a wild animal. It's not from this area. And also people pose a potential danger to it as well, because people get very close, they can stress it out, the dogs can stress it out. So it's a bit of coming from both sides. So it's important to protect people and the seal, that there's just a cordon put up and that everybody keeps their distance.
The leopard seal's large size clearly distinguishes it from the local population of Cape fur seals, who are smaller. The area surrounding the animal has also been cordoned off to prevent any unwanted encounters with the public. This is the second leopard seal to come ashore in Cape Town in 3 years. For some wildlife enthusiasts, the arrival of the leopard seal offers a unique opportunity to get a close-up view of this rare visitor.
One of 5 seals we have, 4 of them being vagrants. I had seen reports that I think SANCOB or other wildlife sort of organisations have looked after it, they have tagged it, it's not sick, it's not dying, and it's going to go back into the water.
Normally we come to this area for birding, but to see a leopard seal is really something special and something we're not likely to see again. It's probably a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and it's absolutely beautiful with the spots on its belly.
For now though, the seal has been tagged by wildlife experts, and is expected to make the journey back to Antarctica in the not too distant future, once he gains enough strength for that lengthy journey. That's Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
Well, it's time now for us to take a short break and return. Your sport news, including Tokyo 2020 organizers confident of safe Olympic Games despite several COVID-19 cases among athletes.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Athletes